All right, I've started the recording.
Hello, I'm Jennifer Smith and I'm with Metro Nashville Public Works and I am the horticulturalist. And I've been tasked with educating citizens of Nashville about the emerald ash borer epidemic. And today we're going to talk about the emerald ash borer in the city of Forest Hills. So just note that the emerald ash borer, which I've referred to as EAB, will kill all native ash trees unless they are treated. All native ash trees unless they are treated. We believe that in Nashville that we have about 1.6 million ash trees, which that of course includes Forest Hills. But understand from many arborists that the hills of Forest Hills and then over into Brentwood has seen a lot of dieback last growing season that we just came through in 2020. So in 4, 5, 6 months from now, when you're expected to see the ash trees coming out, you'll know, oh, we're in the middle of the emerald ash borer epidemic. And that is something that we need to get the word out. And today, what you learned, we hope you will share it with your neighbors and friends. So the EAB, the emerald ash borer, we believe came over from Asia as a crate to pack up maybe a TV or something like that. And the ash wood is what makes the Louisville slugger bats that we enjoy. So ground zero was in Michigan. And you can see that in the map there. And then it moved down into all the way down through Ohio and into Kentucky. And in Tennessee, it was first found in 2010 in a truck stop outside of Knoxville. And why? Because they mostly travel a lot by people moving firewood and they would have had the ash borer in them. So So what is important to know is that in 2014, however, we first found it here in Davidson County. And I remember the day exactly. I've been waiting on it. And so you'll see this picture over here on the left. That's a beautiful little metallic green borer. It's done millions and billions of dollars worth of damage. It's about the size of a cooked grain piece of rice. So it's just a little thing that can do a lot of damage. So an adult ash borer will lay its eggs on the bark of the tree. And when it hatches, the larvae they'll bore into the tree and eat that outer layer of fresh tissue. And that is where the water and fertilizer from the soil food goes up to the tree. So literally, it's eating the tissue where the water moves and conducts up into the leaves of the tree. So the average female can lay up to 40 to 70 eggs in the bark, and many of them do hatch. And they are in there for a year or two eating away, and then they pupate into an adult borer, and then they have the exit. You'll see the exit wound there at number 3, and it's a perfect shaped D-shaped exit wound, and it's so small, it's about the size of a pencil head. And that's when you can tell if you can see that small, that your tree is infested. And then the borer can fly onto its next tree. Now, in every community, the ash tree mortality curve is the same. And we believe first, when we first detected it, it had already been in our community for over 6 years. Now we believe we're over 60% in mortality that we're starting to see. In next spring growing season, we will see so many trees that are in decline. So in managing the emerald ash borer, you have to determine if you in fact have an ash tree. And this is a fairly simple situation because the ash trees have these leaflets. Do you see the top leaflet with all the little leaves coming off of it? At a young age, you see the smooth bark, and then on the left is that beautiful gray diamond-shaped bark. And that's what it looks like at maturity. The oar-shaped leaves you can see now on the tree as they begin to ripen during this time of year. But perhaps the best way to determine if you have an ash tree is you'll see in the middle photo there the opposite branches. And most trees have alternate, but this is the opposite branch. Maples are opposite and dogwoods are also opposite. So you can even look up into the tree from the ground and kind of tell about the branching structure. So we don't want people to confuse it, however, with the leaflets, with the walnuts, the hickories, or the box elder, because they also have those little leaves considered a leaflet. Now, what you need to know is if your ash tree is infested. Well, at this point, many of them have already been affected to some degree. So what you need to know here is you see the progression, 30%, 50% dieback, and 80%. And it's pretty much throughout the whole crown of the tree. But what you need to know is that when it gets to be about 25 to 30% dieback, at that time, there's been so much damage to the tree that treating it at that point may not be a wise decision. But you can see the larvae here in the bottom eating the food, and then those small D-shaped exit wounds that we talked about previously. And here's the S-shaped tunnels under the bark. You can see that. And you can see how it's just physically preventing the water from going up into the tree, into the leaves. And the tree has to have water and food coming up from the roots to the leaves to photosynthesize, because photosynthesizing on a green leaf, so it's taking the sunlight, as what creates the food. And once that happens, then the food, the sugars that it creates comes back down the tree and feeds it. So if a tree is not able to do that, then you might see these small sprouts at the base coming up. And that is a tree's ability to say, gosh, I'm not getting water and food at the top of the tree to feed me. So I'm going to send up these small suckers at the base that will create green leaves. It's a great effort, but it's not enough to sustain the tree. You may see a vertical split in the tree, and that's another sign that the tree is literally just drying out. Now, one thing that we might be able to see in this winter and into the spring is this blonding on the trunk, or woodpeckers. Do you see the pecking of it? And that is just literally where the woodpeckers are trying to get in to get the larvae to eat. So that is really something to note there. Now, once you've determined if you have an ash tree, you've got to make a management decision. We talked about how they get really brittle and can snap. And over on the left-hand side here, excuse me, the right-hand side, you can see where they've just snapped over. Even when you're trying to cut, you really need to get a professional to help cut these trees, because if you don't know what you're doing, they call it the barber chair. They snap back at you, and that's a dangerous situation. But you have three choices. You can treat your trees, you can let it die in place, or you can remove it. So let's talk first about letting it die in place. If it's in an area where if it falls in any direction, it doesn't harm people, a car, a playground, a road, then that may be your option, because they will biodegrade in just about 3 years, again, because they get so brittle. You may remove it. This is a good option. You really want to decide in advance if that's what you want to do, because the sooner you can have the tree removed, even when it's healthy, the easier it is. Because again, when it gets about 20–30% dieback, a lot of the tree care companies will not let their climbers climb into a tree. That's dictated a lot by the insurance companies. So your only real option is to get a bucket truck to that tree. So if it's in a sloped area or an area where you just can't get a bucket truck, that's why you really have to be proactive and take the tree down in advance. And also, when the full epidemic is here, so many people will be, waiting in line to get their tree removed by the tree care companies. So it's supply and demand, and our suggestion is to go ahead and have that done now. Now, treating it, there's been 3 different ways of treating it. The soil drench, you can spray the bark, or you can apply chemical injections, and that's like giving it shots all around the whole circumference of the tree. Now, the soil drench and the bark spray don't really work, or have not proven to work well on trees that are 12 to 20 inches even in diameter. And that's something you have to do every year for the healthy life of that tree. Is you have to apply that chemical spray. So you saw earlier, when the tree is young, it's a slick bark and it's easier for a spray to penetrate. But as it gets older and thicker bark, it's hard for that spray to penetrate. So the best thing at this point too, in our epidemic here in Forest Hills and Davidson County, is to do the injections. And that literally puts a shot of chemical right into that live tissue, and it takes it directly up into the area where the leaves are. And you only want to do that when the tree is growing actively, which, as we're in the winter, that doesn't not the time to do it. But as the trees start growing, the leaves start coming out in the springtime, that's the time to do it. So again, you have to make a management decision, and I encourage you to make it in advance, to let it die, to remove it, or to treat it. And the longer you wait to make your decision, the more it will cost. So as a owner of a tree, what is your responsibility? Well, you have your neighbor's tree that could influence your yard. You have a boundary tree, and that's a tree that's between two pieces of property. It could be 50-50, or it could be 80-20, and then the right-of-way tree. So your neighbor's tree, that's something that you really need to also be concerned about, because it could snap and fall into your yard. So you need to have an open communication with your neighbor about that. If it's a boundary tree, then both neighbors are supposed to come together, make a health decision on the health and well-being of that tree. And I've done that with my ash tree. I had two, and one was a boundary tree with my neighbors and I, and we chose to split the cost of having it treated. We'll talk about the right-of-way in Forest Hills in just a moment, but proper debris disposal is very important too. When you have your trees cut down, the best thing is to have them grinded at the site, because the grinding of it should be that the wood is about no more than 1 inch square. And in that area, there's not enough live tissue for that boar to eat. So it would die fairly quickly. And I know in Nashville, our brush collection meets that standard, and we'll talk about Forest Hills as well. We have in Nashville, this brochure, Emerald Ash Borer Epidemic in Nashville, and you can download it from our tree website, which is trees.nashville.gov. And so you can refer it to other people, and you can print it off yourself. So in the city of Forest Hills, their brush collection is once a month. It's not for commercial properties to be used or by professionals. So you need to make sure when you hire an arborist that they understand that they'll have to haul off the tree that they cut down. In the public right-of-way, this is something really important for you to know. If there's an ash tree in the right-of-way, what are Forest Hills policies? So first off, the right-of-way is considered in Forest Hills about 10 feet from the edge of the pavement. That's just a general guideline, but it's a helpful guideline. So in the right-of-way, that's where all the public utilities are. And you might often see your rectangle water main box in the yard. That's in the right-of-way. So the city of Forest Hills will remove trees in this area when they have fallen or identified as dead by the city arborist. So that's something that you're to be aware of, is that your city plans to take care of the ash trees and not treat them, but to get rid of them once the arborist has identified them as a need to be removed. And in Nashville, we are not treating our ash trees in the public right-of-way. So many of us have not ever hired an arborist before, so I wanted to touch base on some guidelines. Ask for proof of liability insurance. Get written bids with starts and completion dates. Make sure the cleanup and proper disposal are included, which is something we just mentioned. Get detailed contracts with signatures. Ensure that the company is qualified to do the work, because safety is so important in dealing with ash trees. Again, the ash snap, as it's known, they can snap from the base, and that's what you really have to make while you're making your management plan, is to protect you and your property and loved ones. So make sure that your arborist is trained in safety procedures. Now, again, in Nashville, which includes the city of Forest Hills, there's an estimated 1.6 million ash trees, and we believe that Forest Hills is one of the hot spots. So the loss of trees there, and the the trees and the hills that you have there, the trees there that'll help prevent erosion from the hills. Trees are very important to your community. So as these trees have died and gone away, you need to also have a plan to replant. Just briefly, some of the benefits: they improve your air quality, they help conserve energy and reduce energy costs, they reduce stormwater runoff. Just think of the tree, the water hitting the tree and then gently filtering down to the ground, and then how much water is absorbed by the roots. They really are a great stormwater, helpful to stormwater runoff. Of course, they provide wildlife habitat. They're the home to our birds. And I really believe that they add natural character to our city. So that's many reasons why you want to replant. And go ahead and be thinking about that. One of our tree nonprofits, the Nashville Tree Conservation Corps, has a ongoing tree sale that you can look at throughout the year. They only deliver, though, in tree planting seasons. But that's one easy way to get your trees planted, is having a tree delivered to your home that you can choose to plant yourself as a family, perhaps, activity, or have it planted for you. So let's remember also that we want to plant a variety of trees. We don't want to come back with one type of tree that another epidemic might do away with. So have fun with your plant selection. Really consider the right tree in the right place. What is the mature size of that tree, the height? Look up, are there utility lines? And you call 811 to call before you dig, and it's a free service, and they can tell you where your utility lines are off the street. And just remember, so important, that during planting, right after planting, a tree needs really deep water. And then roughly during the growing seasons for up to 3 years, and anytime during times of drought. Very important. And I want to touch base a little bit more about trees. And when you plant them, there's just a few things that you have to know and do right, but they are very important. So note that tree roots breathe, and if you plant them too deep, they will suffocate, or they'll try to grow shallow and start circling the tree. You don't want that. Only add back what you dug out. Don't add fertilizer or compost, because that makes that area so sweet to the roots, they won't go out into the new environment to establish roots there. So don't plant it too deep. Don't add mulch or fertilizer. Dig your hole about twice as wide as the root ball, and not as deep. And on our trees.nashville.gov website, we also have planting guidelines, diagrams for this. Now, a seedling is a small tree, and it's about 1 year from a seed. And if you have an area that you need to plant a lot of areas, or want to reforest an area, or an area by a stream, the riparian area by a stream or a lake, the forestry approach is to plant a lot of seedlings there. You don't intend to necessarily go back and mow that area or water these trees. And let's just say you planted 50 trees and 40 of them lived, that's a success rate in the forestry field. If you plant just one seedling in your yard, that's fine. You might want to grow it out in about a 5-bucket container for a year or two. But when you plant it, you may also want to put a bright ribbon on the top of it so that those that are mowing know that that's a tree and not to be mowed down. So how can you help? Well, first talk with your family and friends and neighbors, and you can tell them about this video that will be on the Forest Hills website that they can access. And plant a tree in your yard, always a good thing. Volunteer for community tree plantings. You know, Nashville right now, and again includes Forest Hills, has a campaign to plant 500,000 trees by 2050. And that's a lot of trees. But think of all the trees we're losing just to emerald ash borer, all the development, and trees just die of old age. And so many of our trees were planted 75 to 100 years ago when some of our earlier subdivisions were put in. So just something to think about. So, but when you plant a tree, we want you to go to our Root Nashville website and put a dot there so that tree can be counted in our effort to plant 500,000 trees by 2050. And then do not move firewood. You're supposed to burn it where you get it. And again, this is how so many of these infestations are happening across the country. People moving firewood. And you can see in that picture where the larvae have been eating, that's how it simply gets moved. So basically in Nashville, there's a lot of groups out there interested in getting the word out about the emerald ash borer. So, you know, any kind of questions, I'd be happy to help answer, but I want to leave with this photo. Again, it's just the first step is determining, do you even have an ash tree? Does your neighbor have an ash tree? You do need to get out and talk to your neighbors because you don't want an ash tree that you didn't know about next door snap into your yard. And so that's why that communication with the neighbor is so important. So I'm not sure if there's any questions out. I know this program was designed to answer a lot of questions, but I'd be happy to help answer any of them that I can. Okay. Well, thank you again today for joining the presentation on the emerald ash borer epidemic in Nashville, including Forest Hills. You can go to our website, trees.nashville.gov, for the brochure that goes along with this presentation. And you can also tell your neighbors about this. And do note that next spring of 2021, our citizens are going to really start noticing this because a lot of these ash trees are not going to leaf out. And that's when a lot of people are going to go, oh, what is that? And pay attention to it. So this, again, this presentation will be on the City of Forest Hills website, and you can just share the link with your family and friends and neighbors. Thank you and have a great day.